All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. For those of you who are just joining us, a special welcome. My name is Mary Brown, and I'm the Director of Middle and Upper School Enrollment at Catlin Gabel. I also want to extend a warm welcome to those Catlin Gabel fifth grade families who are also attending tonight's session. So tonight's session is designed to give you an opportunity to hear from a small group of students who at one time were new to Catlin Gabel's middle school. So you should feel free to ask them any questions that you have about their transition to Catlin Gabel's middle school, as well as just their life as a middle school student. And you can do that by typing your questions into the chat feature. And I should say that, you don't have to wait until the formal Q&A time to type your question into the chat. You can do it at any point. We just won't begin to address them till the Q&A time. As we get started here, I just want to remind everyone that we are recording this session and we will make it available on our website afterward. And then finally, I just want to acknowledge that as a school that really values community, we would so much prefer to invite you all to our beautiful campus and just be in each other's presence as we hear from these great students. But until this pandemic is under control, gathering over Zoom will simply have to do. Also, for those who have not tuned in to previous sessions, I'm going to just spend a minute or two kind of grounding everyone with some kind of basic facts about Catlin Gabel. So we are a progressive independent day school. We're on a 67-acre campus in Southwest Portland, about 5 miles west of downtown. We span grades preschool through 12 with a total of 778 students. Among those 778 students, 28% receive financial assistance. 45% identify as students of color. We draw from all over the Portland metro as well as parts of Washington. So we have students who live in 56 different zip codes. They hold citizenships in 25 different countries and they speak 41 different languages at home. Specific to our middle school, that spans grades 6 through 8. We have 190 students enrolled. Typically about 60, sometimes 59 in 6th grade, 65 or 64 in 7th grade, and about 65 students in 8th grade. Among those 190 middle school students, 41% of them identify as students of color and 28% receive financial assistance. And at least 80% of them, 80% of them play at least one sport at Catlin Gabel. And then specific to the new middle school students. So this year we had 27 new students start our middle school in the fall. And that's pretty typical. It's about, if you do the math, it's about 12 to 14% of the middle school students are brand new to the middle school each year. Typically the average number of new 6th graders is right around 16. The average number of new 7th graders is right around 7, and the average number of new 8th graders is about 3. Of that group of 27 new middle school students this year, 52% identified as students of color. They came also from all over the Portland metro from 24 different schools. Close to 80% came from public schools, and about 20% or so came from private schools prior to enrolling at Catlin. They also came from all over the Portland metro area, as well as Washington and California. And a number of them hold dual citizenship, one from India, one from China, one from Japan, the UK, and Germany. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Steve Pape.
Hi, everyone. I introduced myself, I think, probably to some of you a little while ago, but I will do it again. I am the assistant head at Catlin Gabel Middle School. I work closely with Ted as his thinking partner, and I think of myself in my role as a thinking partner of all the faculty and staff, but also with students and families as well. A big part of my role is thinking about how to work with students and families to build a positive school climate. How to make sure that the school community we have is inclusive and welcoming, and that students feel confident in navigating our school culture. And that's particularly true for new students, and particularly true in a year like this where we're connecting in a remote learning setting. I also am an advisor of a group of sixth graders who I love getting to see every day when we see them for advisory. And I also think of my role as just generally getting to know students really well and being there to advocate for them and to listen to their needs and concerns, and also to be an advocate for families too. And I'll also say it's worth noting I'm a parent of a seventh grader, Moses Pape, who was new to Catlin Gabel as a fifth grader a couple of years ago. And it's surprising to think it was already a couple of years ago that he was a brand new student. Um, and just in working as a parent and as a professional at Catlin Gabel, there are many things about the school that I find really compelling. And I think central to all of them is the students and the community that hopefully you'll get to know through the panels that we have here tonight. So I'll try to keep my comments brief so we can get to hear from them, the real story about Catlin Gabel. But one of the things that feels central to me, both as an educator, but also as the parent of a kid in our school, is that this school takes very seriously its progressive education commitments. And in particular, the one that stands out to me is its commitment to teaching the whole child. I have an opportunity in my role as assistant head and as advisor and as parent to get to know lots of kids, really all of the kids in our community really well, and not just as students, but as whole people. Beyond being an advisor and an administrator, I also work with kids in student government through our middle school student association. I work with students and with other adults in our school with assemblies and designing programming around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I am a disciplinarian at times, as part of being an administrator in a middle school is a part of it. But I think those are also really important educational opportunities that help me get to know kids in the whole sense. And I'm also a quiz bowl coach. Thursday afternoons, I meet with kids to play games and trivia with them, even in a remote setting. And on all of these roles are really important to me in getting to know kids. And I think beyond just me, I think faculty and staff as well are equally committed to knowing our students as whole children. They're curious about kids. They're committed to getting to know them both inside and outside of the classroom. And just speaking to a concrete example of that, earlier today before this meeting, I was meeting with the sixth grade team and we were working on our conference preparations. Conferences are happening in the first week of November, and every family will be meeting with the advisors to get a snapshot in addition to some reports about how kids are doing. And the amount of time we take as a faculty and staff to talk about every single kid has always been inspiring to me. We have 4 meetings scheduled over the next month where each advisor gets a chance to talk about every kid and to listen to all of the teachers about every kid. And more often than not, we end up talking not just about how kids are doing in math and in English, but we also pay attention to other aspects of them as whole children. And I'm going to pull up a screen here that at Catlin Gabel, can everyone see my screen? I don't get thumbs up from screens off, but I'm going to assume that you can. These 7 skills and dispositions speak to the whole child in my mind, because these are academic skills, but they're also life skills, and they transcend any given class. And we're always trying to engage kids in their academics, but also in these things like adaptive thinking, applied thinking, network thinking, collaborative skills, cross-cultural skills, communication skills. And one that I really always am pleased to find is the appreciation for beauty, nature, and life, which I've seen some of these others at other schools, and Catlin Gabel, I think, is the only place that I've really seen that called out as a transcendent skill that applies in all classes and in all settings. And so these are the things that we more often than not spend our time talking about and attending to in the growth of kids across their 6th, 7th, and 8th grade trajectories in order to ensure that they're ready for the next year, the next class, the next test, but also success in the upper school and beyond. And really, I think we understand these as transcendent skills that help kids be ready in an uncertain world, where with a year of 2020 that has thrown us many wrenches that we never would have anticipated, we want kids to be able to take this kind of thinking and these kinds of habits and dispositions into them regardless of what the future holds. And then beyond that, this is a school that has a strong sense of its core values. And we have 3 core values: integrity, inclusion, and kindness. And more than any school that I've worked at, this is a school that seeks to live these more thoroughly every day. And so these show up in our classrooms, they show up in daily assemblies, they show up in my conversations with advisees, and if there's a discipline situation, this is the framework we use. They even show up in a history class where you're talking about what it means to be a courageous historian. And so all of these, I think, point to the idea that we're teaching to the whole child, we're knowing the whole child, and we're trying to make sure that all of our children wholly feel welcomed and included to be a part of our community. And I think that's particularly important to think about if your children or you are considering joining this community as new folks. And I think because we attend to the whole child, and because we are in a community that is inclusive around these values, I think that that means that we tend to do really well by all kinds of kids, coming from all kinds of programs and other kinds of schools. Kids who are very different from each other with very different backgrounds have done really well in our program. And I hope, though, that you'll get to see that from this group of kids that we've invited here as our panelists today, because these kids are both very diverse in who they are and what they bring to our school, but they're also really typical of what Catlin Gabel has to offer. And I think that you'll find from their answers to your questions that you'll hopefully get a picture of what our community is all about. So with that, I'm going to ask the panelists to go ahead and unmute themselves, or well, let's have you stay muted until you speak, but could you please turn your cameras on so that we can see you? There's Lucia, and I see Karen, and I see Katie and Ethan, and I need to expand my screen to see everyone. There's Riddy and Isaiah. Are you there with us, Isaiah? Go ahead and turn your camera on if you're able to do so. And in the meantime,
it won't let me turn it on.
Oh, okay. Isaiah, maybe what I'll do is ask you to maybe leave and rejoin and see if that fixes the issue.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Isaiah. In the meantime, oh, there he is. You're there. With that, I'll go in order of how you appear on my screen. I'm not sure if that's how everyone else sees you, but I'm gonna ask you to introduce yourselves, share your name.
I'll interrupt for a second and just ask you to stop sharing the screen so that the audience can see the panelists. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, absolutely, thank you. Totally forgot about that. All right, so we'll start with you, Lucia, and what I'll have you do is share your name, what grade you're currently in, what school you previously came from, and when you joined the Catlin community. And one more thing, what are some of your favorite activities to participate in at Catlin Gabel?
Hi, I'm Lucia. I'm currently in 7th grade. I joined Catlin in 6th grade, and I was at West 12th View Elementary, which we actually share a fence with. My favorite activity at Catlin is definitely outdoor trips. I love going to places from like our backyard basically to Orcas Island and just being with my friends, being silly, just having a great time.
Awesome, thank you. Let's go with Ethan now.
Hi, I'm Ethan. I'm an 8th grader right now. I came from Irvington Public School, which is my neighborhood school. I live about 2 blocks away from it. And I came in 5th grade, so 4 years ago. Some of my favorite activities, sports, and clubs that I participate in at Catlin is usually, if things aren't so crazy, I run cross country in the fall for our athletic team. And then this year, I know they're offering a special program, but another option came up, which is robotics for 8th graders. They started to allow that this year. So, I guess it's called engineering because it's not just robotics. It's like programming and a bunch of other stuff too. And other than that, Quiz Bowl I went to once and need to go back again because it was quite fun. And I can see Steve's appreciation for that. Anyway, that's about all.
Thank you. And now let's hear from Karen.
Hi, my name is Karen. I'm currently in the 7th grade. The school that I went to before Catlin Gabel was the International School. I joined last year in 6th grade. One of my favorite activities to do, I like going on field trips. I think that's a lot of fun. Also, hopefully in the spring, I will be able to do track. But yes, that's all.
Thank you, Karen. Now next, Katie Gregg.
Hi, my name's Katie. I'm in 8th grade. I also came from the international school. I came in 6th grade and I like to play tennis in the fall because we do it in the fall here. And I like to play basketball in the winter.
Thank you, Katie. How about Riddy?
Hi, I'm Riddy, and my current grade is 8th grade, and I came from Virginia last year, and I joined in 7th grade, and I used to go to the Langley School, and some activities that I do. I've done the middle school main stage program in the fall and the spring, and I'm doing it online this fall as well. And it's a lot of fun. And another thing that I've done is I've played basketball for Catlin Gabel in the winter last year, and that was a lot of fun as well.
Thank you, Riddy. Isaiah.
My name is Isaiah. I'm currently in 8th grade and I joined in 7th grade. The school I went to previously was Reynolds Other Academy. Um, some of the things I enjoyed last year for activities was basketball in the winter. That was very fun because I was a new student then.
All right, and I'm going to ask a few simple questions and give an invitation to attendees to go ahead and start typing questions in the chat. And then I will see them, and we might not get to all of them, but we'll get to the ones that we can, and we'll keep track of the ones that we don't and try to circle back with you in some way. So my first question, and panelists, when I ask these questions, I may not have all of you answer, so I might pick and choose who answers them just so that we have enough time to get to more questions. But to start with, until we have some questions in there, we'll probably have, for the first couple questions, have everyone answer. So why don't we stick with the same order that I just had you go through? And the first question I'll have you answer is, thinking about not so much activities, but your classes, what would you say is your favorite class and why? And that could be a class you're in right now, or it could be a class you've had in the past. Lucia.
My favorite classes are the art classes. I really like how it rotates. My personal favorite is drama, just because I really like the teacher, and she currently is one of my advisors.
Thank you. Ethan.
So I've had a lot of great classes, and it's hard to kind of distinguish which one was my favorite. In the past year, my favorite classes were math and science, respectively. Well, no, they were the same. I don't know why I said respectively. And then this year, I think math and history are both really, really fun. A lot of classes just haven't really sped up yet. I mean, it's kind of still the beginning 2 months of the year. And it seems like, oh boy, it's really slow. But like we're getting into stuff, it's just kind of like the nitty gritty stuff to take notes in your journal. So, for example, in science, we're recording like how to properly describe an element rather than actually getting to more of like the experiments and stuff that we do in 8th grade chemistry. But yeah, math and history right now are fun.
Thank you, Ethan. Karen, you're up next.
My favorite classes are math, and I also like studio arts. Personally, I just love doing math, and I think it's a lot of fun. And I like drawing and painting and just doing art, so I really enjoy doing studio art too.
Thank you. How about you, Katie?
I think my favorite class is probably English, just because I like writing a lot, but I really like the math teachers in the middle school.
Thank you. How about you, Riddy?
That's a very hard question because I like all of my classes a lot. Let's see. I guess one of my favorite classes would have to be math because I don't know. I just always think that solving stuff is just really fun. Another thing I like is the arts classes. All of them, they're amazing. And one thing in particular was last year I did woodshop for the first time. And that was a really great experience because I got to learn a lot of new things. So that was really fun.
All right, how about you, Isaiah?
I agree with Reddy that last year woodshop was really fun because we learned a lot of the machines and how to work things. I think one of my favorite classes this year is history because you kind of have like at the beginning an open discussion point, and I enjoy those. So math and history would be my favorite.
Thank you. All right, I think we'll dive into some of the questions popping up. And so I'll accept flesh or digital hands if you feel like you have a good answer to this question and are really wanting to. And if not, then I'll just pick one of you. So the first question I'll ask is, are the classes hard? Do you have a lot of homework, or rather, could you give us a picture of what your homework in general looks like on a typical night? And so let's, a bunch of hands there. So awesome. How about we start with Lucia?
It depends on what classes are, what things are due. Actually today I had no homework, which was really nice, a nice break. Some days there's a lot, but it's manageable, and the teachers are really good at communicate. It's really nice because you can communicate with your teachers over the weekend with your emails. So you can say like, "Hey, I don't understand this problem. Can I go over it with you in class?" Like, so the classwork is kind of adjusted to you. So if your science teacher knows that nobody in your class knows about physics, they're gonna ease into it. They're not gonna be like, okay, physics test first day. So the classwork is it's really good. It's really well adjusted to the students.
Thank you. How about Katie?
I wouldn't really call the classes hard, but more challenging. And I also think it's based on the students. Like personally, I think math's really hard, but that's just like my personal experience. But I know like some people might find English harder or science. I think it's not really, I think it's more of an individual.
And then how about the last comment from Riddy?
I agree with Lucy and Katie. And the classwork is like kind of tailored towards the student because if they find something difficult, like personally, if I don't understand something that we did in class, I can always like email my teacher and reach out to them, and we can like set up a time to meet outside of class so that it's like one-on-one, and I can properly understand everything then. And for homework, it really does depend on what classes you have in the day and how much homework each teacher like generally gives. So usually it's pretty manageable, but sometimes it's like not anything at all.
So the next question that I'll ask is about how much classwork you do with other students, and also how much interaction you have with other students and other activities. And I should call out for you all as panelists that I think you have two answers to this question, right? You have Catlin Gabel last year, and then you have Catlin Gabel during a pandemic. And I think both are relevant. You can speak to both. But I guess being the optimist that I am, and being excited about the prospect of us hopefully getting back to campus sooner rather than later, I would love for you, maybe if you could provide examples more about like what it's like when school is a bit more normal than it is right now. That would be my preference anyways. So let's start with Ethan.
Okay, so for doing different classwork projects with different students in possibly different classes, the same class in other grades, there are a lot of independent projects that we take on. I can speak to other than our classes. So, for example, last year when school was still in, I was working with an 8th grader. His name is Campbell. He's now in 9th grade, and a 7th grader now named Zach. And we were working to fix a 3D printer that had found its way to our school, and that was just a project that we took on our own at lunch. So there's things like that where people will start to play games in the library. People will kind of do study groups in the commons, which is a big open area in the middle of the middle school building. There's like a bunch of stairs, and it's huge, and everyone can see each other when they're doing their cubby stuff and all that. In class, I feel like there are a lot of group work projects where we have to gather each other together in separate groups, and then we'll basically create a project and we'll assign different tasks to each individual. And then sometimes we will, for example, there was one connection, I think maybe it was, I forget what it was, but there was at one point where there were two classes that were working together. That was we were working on a project together. It might have been Rice, which is a project in humanities for 6th grade about kind of some places in like, okay, it stands for Rome, India, China, and Egypt, I think. Sorry, I always get that mixed up. It was a history project, but then we also did certain things, I think, in math and art, maybe, that involved putting together a project. And across other grades, I mean, there's definitely some interaction, not as much in classes, but on independently, I feel like there is definitely some crossplay. And then we sometimes have these things called activities, which is like a separate class that happens sometimes before lunch on Thursdays. At least that's how we did it last year. Not sure how that will manifest in the following year, but that was cross grade, so there were plenty of people from all 6th, 7th, and 8th grade coming in.
Thank you, Ethan. How about Karen next?
So I personally think that it's based on what classes you have, I guess. So in history, I think that we work in partners and in just we work together a lot. In math, at least last year in 6th grade, not so much, but we did have some projects that we had to do together. And also in science too. And yeah, I think it depends on the class, but mostly, yes, we do do group projects and interact during classes.
And then Isaiah, I've seen you raise your hand a couple of times. Do you have an example you could share? Or
I have one and it just came out of my mind. But I know cross grade, I haven't really done much cross grade work. I know a lot of other people have. But I think Catlin right now, we have a lot of interaction in between students because and we have like some Chinese projects where we're talking about how to improve the middle school and a lot of other projects that we're doing now that is very interactive and you're working with other people and you can set up like asynchronous sessions outside of class.
Thank you. That was great. So I'm going to bounce around the questions a little bit because I think they might build on each other. So there's a broad question here that I think, again, calling for raised hands for folks who want to answer it. Do you feel like most students work hard? And I guess I'm interpreting that question as, are students excited to learn? Are they committed to school? Are they focused? And I see Lucia's hand is up, so go ahead.
I think that all students do work hard, just sometimes it doesn't show for different teachers. I think that Catlin's really nice because you can work really hard at everything and the teachers don't say, okay, you tried your best at math, here's an F. So it's nice because they don't tell you your grades, which kind of like gives you a relaxed feeling. So it's not like everything's graded and you don't feel like there's like a camera on your back. It's really nice because all students do work hard, and it's not just in like math and science and English. You get to work hard in arts or PE, and that shows, and it's just really it's really accepting. So if you're having trouble, the teachers will like take you aside and talk to you and like help you smooth out the bumps in the road. And it's not just, okay, you got it wrong, let's move on. You're gonna keep that wrong on your report card onto something else that we'll still get wrong. It's the teachers want to stop and help you get it right and help you learn more.
Anyone have anything to add to Lucia's comment? Okay, then there's a follow-up question from the same questioner who is asking, and as it always comes up every year when we have a student panel, even when it's not a pandemic, the surprise that folks have or just wonderment about what it means to be at a school that doesn't have grades. And so I'll reframe that question for you a little bit. How is it that students get feedback, and how is it that students know how they're doing in a school that it doesn't have grades in the way a traditional school might think about? Everyone wants to answer this question, so let's start with Riddy.
Last year when I joined the school, I was a bit confused in the beginning as well, but I found out that there aren't like percent grades or like A's, B's, C's, all that stuff. But the teachers do give you feedback. It's like verbal feedback. So you know what you're doing good and topics and things that you might want to improve on. And it's actually really nice because you're not obsessing over a little number or something just so that you can like make it to an A or anything. It's just really about trying your best and trying your hardest and trying to make sure that you're able to learn all this stuff. And it's not like about if you get it right all the time. So it's really nice.
Someone else have anything they want to add to that? Let's hear from Katie.
I agree with Riddy and the fact that like when you take a math test and they tell you what you get wrong, but you don't obsess over the fact that you got number 7 wrong. But in general, when you get your report card back, you're looking for if you understand less, like you got that problem wrong, but if you understand the concepts that you're trying to learn.
I find that sometimes people who are not in our community wonder about student motivation and might think that students in other schools are motivated by grades. Do you find that not having grades in the way a traditional school would have is less motivating, or do you find that it's a different kind of motivation you get at Catlin Gabel? How about Ethan?
So I don't think that it is less motivating at all. I think that the way that the classes are structured, it's the curriculum is in a way that's, for example, interesting. For example, in 7th grade, I still don't love the topic of history, but the teacher still found a way to like make it interesting, just the information that we were learning about. I think we were learning about like conquistadors last year and the conquest of North America and South America. And it was interesting. Like there were tests, but that wasn't like getting a good grade wasn't my major focus. However, on certain things like homework assignments, especially for classes like math and science, we kind of get a grade. It's more like on a rubric. We have like 4 different sections with like verbal sections. So like example of science thing has clear reasoning, has reasoning that teacher can understand, but maybe not understandable by general audience, and then has no reasoning whatsoever. And then we'll get graded on a rubric in Google Classroom. And that's really helpful. So for example, math homework gives you a 3-point score, 1, 2, or 3 points, and then you can kind of figure out what's going on. And then oftentimes, if you get certain things wrong, the teacher will reach out to you and ask you what would be helpful and potentially give you some tips for solving those issues that you had on the previous homework.
Isaiah, last comment on this question.
I think It's a little bit different as a type of motivation because when you have grades, it's a bit more pressure saying, I want to get this grade, I want to get this grade. If I don't get this grade, it doesn't look good. And I think how Catlin has made like rubrics for the class, you get feedback that shows like what your understanding is and where you can improve on. So the teachers are like there to help you, and it gives you sense like, oh, I can work on this part and then I will be like an A. So I think it's a little bit of a different kind of motivation, but I don't think there's a problem with not being motivated.
As a parent of a seventh grader, I find that, and also just kind of knowing where we're coming from in our pedagogy, part of our reasoning is that we believe students work best when they're intrinsically motivated and not extrinsically motivated by things like grades. And so by de-emphasizing the grades in the report card, we are trying to emphasize with kids the actual learning and the skills that they want to improve in order to develop mastery, rather than just completing assignments and doing the basic minimum that they need to do in order to get the grade that they want. And so I also find, having worked in many other schools, that in other environments, not all kids, but some kids sometimes get a fixed mindset around grades, and they come to define themselves by the grades that they've gotten in the past. And I think that it's one of my favorite aspects of this school is I really can't think of kids who are defined by the feedback that they get. And instead they're defined by the opportunities that they have in order to redo tests and quizzes, in order to do better on the next assignment, in order to internalize the feedback that they're getting from their teachers. And then I see a bunch of questions about how it was to transition. So I'm going to ask broadly a question for all of you, which is maybe besides the grades thing, because it really already spoke to that as a surprise. But what else in coming to Catlin Gabel as a new student from a different kind of school was most surprising for you when you came? And then there are a couple of questions that are specifically asking about, if you came from a small school, or if you came from a public school, how did that transition work? So I think all of those are things we'd love to hear from you about. So let's hear from Lucia.
The biggest thing that surprised me when I came to Catlin was walking into Larry's science room. And I'd seen it before because my sister was a sixth grader, I got to come and see Catlin. But like there were fish tanks on the wall, there was a turtle, there was like a lungfish, which we got to learn about. And it was just so, I don't know if enriching is the right word, but like Catlin, like it's kind of like the other schools where like I was looking at a garden, and Catlin was like I was planting the plants and like watering them and like getting my hands dirty. And it was really incredible being able to learn like physically stuff, not open your textbook and to page 3 and read about the founding fathers. It was great being able to experience my learning. That sounds corny, but that's just how it felt.
Thank you. Who would like to add to what Lucia has said? Let's hear from Karen.
Something that surprised me about Catlin Gabel when I arrived was how welcoming everybody was. I personally am kind of shy, and I was kind of scared to get to a new school because I was at my old school since kindergarten. So when I arrived, I was a little bit lost, but so many teachers offered to help me, and also my peers offered to help me, how to like show me around, and if I didn't know how to do something, they would help me. And yes, I was surprised about how welcoming everybody was.
Thank you. How about one more comment on this question? We can hear from Katie.
I think the thing that surprised me the most was the sense of community. I felt like I really got to know people, and there's just like little things that make me feel more connected. Like an example would be in the math classroom, they have a mascot. He's named Gordon. He's a gourd. And that's just such like a strange thing, but it just like anytime I enter the math room, it's just something we can all talk about and connect about.
Thank you. And so speaking about the idea of like, is it different to come from different kinds of school? Just quick show of hands, how many of you were at a public school prior to this one? All right. And then how many of you were at a smaller school than Catlin Gabel prior to this one? All right. Perfect. Could I get someone who came from a public school to comment on how the transition went, whether it was really hard to adjust or whether it went smoother than you expected? I guess we'll go with Lucia.
It was a lot smoother for me. It was pretty smooth, partly because I knew the community and I knew a couple of teachers because my sister, like I said before, went to Catlin, so I knew how to get around kind of. But it was a bit of a shock going from textbook learning to getting your hands dirty and like being able to touch a lungfish rather than just reading about it. And it was really, really, it was kind of like a shock, kind of, that all these teachers were really like, they wanted to talk to me, they wanted to ask about my day, they wanted to focus on me and all the other students. That was really nice. I went to a public school from 3rd grade to 5th grade. So I had gotten kind of used to how it was at West Haiti or at the public school.
What it was, I'll just follow up question on that, Lucia. Was the workload or the rigor of the classes, was it harder, easier, or just different? Or the same?
It was different because at my old school, the days felt really long. At Catlin, they felt really short and fun. And some classes, I was like, I don't want to leave. I want to like stay in this lesson forever. Where at my old school, it was kind of like, when is it going to be done? I want to get away. I want to just go home and be done.
Thank you. And then Ethan, you want to add to what Lucia said?
Yeah, so specifically about the structure of the schools, I think it's a little bit different just because we have a little bit, I guess, in 5th grade and classes beyond that, since we have in my old school, we would have maybe one teacher for a class of 22 students normally. And that was elementary school, so we stayed in that class all day. But the main issue was in all our subjects, certain people would be better than other people at certain things. They would have more proficiency. But the thing is, there was only one teacher, and the teacher couldn't really adjust the curriculum that well to fit every student. So it was always the class goes as fast as the weakest link. So that was a little bit frustrating, especially in certain subjects where certain people of the class knew that they were able to do certain things, but they were being held back by people who just frankly didn't really care about learning about it. And that was a little bit interesting. I feel like at Catlin, the structure is we have several teachers per class or smaller classes per different teachers in the middle school specifically. So the subjects can be more tailored to the student in which we learn about stuff that's more our level. And also there's no like big try and get person to get ahead of the group, because in public school, when people were like, okay, well, you're going to do better, so I'll give you a math challenge packet to keep them kind of at that level. But at the same time, it kind of separated them more from the rest of the class because they were at that level. However, at Catlin, it's at a higher bar than what I was used to in public school, but that forces the people who are at the lower to kind of get into the rhythm, which is, I think, a good thing. I definitely had a little bit more work in specific things, but we were all at the same level. And the people that were higher than us have a wholly specific different class. Now, I don't know if that's going to stay this way. And that was only for certain subjects like math. There was a kind of a year ahead math group that was taught by a different teacher. In terms of class length, what keeps it really interesting rather than being in public school is the classes are short and they like the time changes, especially if we're in school learning. We'll have 2 75-minute blocks a day and 3 45-minute blocks a day. And it keeps it interesting because you're always bouncing around. You're trying to, you go from one class to the next thinking, oh, wait, that was quick. That was easy. Like, why was it so ominous? Like, why was I not looking forward to that class? And then, yeah, so it's just, the schedule's different. And I
Thank
think
you.
that helps.
I'm wondering if one of you who came from a smaller school could just offer a comment about how that transition went for you. We'll go to Isaiah.
For me, I kind of agree with the people who went to public school. It was a lot of textbook learning, but having a smaller class, like let's just say about 20 students and one teacher, she could get around to people. The teacher could get around to people, but she couldn't really get around to everybody. And I think one of the things about having a private school like that is that a lot of the experiences are on textbook and you don't have as many field trips as we do here, or getting out into.
I think we've lost your sound, Isaiah. I think that's okay. We'll come. Can other people hear him? No. Okay. Well, we'll move on to the next question, and then Isaiah, maybe you can reset that. Next question is of a different focus. What sports teams does the middle school offer, and are these teams competitive? First of all, how many of, just raise a hand if you play sports, have played sports at Catlin? All right, so there's a mix. All right, Katie, can you speak to that?
Okay. Catlin offers like a lot of sports. Should I? Okay, I'm just gonna say them. In the fall, there's tennis, there's volleyball, there's soccer, and I think either track or cross country, some kind of running.
Yeah.
And then in the winter, there's basketball. I think that's it. And then in the spring, it's track, and I also think that's it. And they are competitive. Well, it's not like they are competitive. You do play against other schools, but I played basketball and we were like really bad. Radio was also on the team, but we didn't like, yes, we cared, but at the same time, it's more about having fun than it is. There's not pressure to like win. Of course you want to win, but it's super competitive.
All right. I see Ethan is ready to comment. Is there someone else that we haven't heard from recently who can comment on this? Or we can hear from Ethan, that's fine. Or Riddy, you're ready to comment? Okay, go ahead.
So yes, I was also on the basketball team with Katie, and I agree. There's no pressure to like win, and there's no pressure that you have to like train really, really, really hard or something. And you compete against other schools, but it's like usually friendly competition. And again, of course, you want to win, but the main point of it is to just try your best and also have fun. And that's what I did, and I really, really enjoyed playing basketball. So.
And I'll also say that I think it's important to know that our sports teams have a no-cut policy. Which may mean that we just have a lot of teams if a lot of kids come out to play. So I know my son played basketball last year and he had never played on a basketball team before. So he was a complete beginner, but he was encouraged to and enjoyed just giving it a try. And I think they had 4 teams for the boys basketball last year. And they had not had that many before, but it was just, like the majority of boys in the middle school thought, hey, I'll try basketball this year. And so then we created teams to make that possible. So they're competitive in the sense that they're sports, but I also think that we fully embrace the idea that middle school is a time to explore and try out different versions of yourself as a middle schooler. And so our sports very much fit that philosophy. And that means we reduce the pressure on winning and we increase the opportunities to just give something a try and be included. Another question there is about generally other school activities. Someone's asking about computer programming and if there are clubs and opportunities to do that. And I think more broadly, just, how does a motivated Catlin Gabel student who's working hard in their classes balance the life of being a student with all of the activities and opportunities that we offer to students? So I'll start with Ethan, because I know Ethan can speak to the computer part at least a little.
Yeah, so like I said, this year there was a good opportunity for 8th grade to join engineering. And in years past, they have let certain 8th graders who have basically, I think, had connections already with the engineering group. I'm not sure. It's usually a high school program, so I'm not sure if it will continue being an 8th grade allowed program during next year or whenever we're back in school. I think so. That's what I can say about it. However, I'm new to the program. I don't know much about it. There have been 8th graders in the school who have been in it in the past, and I don't really know how they got in, but specific to the middle school, I actually led with some of my classmates a programming club for one of our activity sessions I was talking about earlier. It was a cross grade session, about half an hour every Thursday or every other Thursday, I think, before lunch. And we were just teaching the basics in Python. And at that time, I actually didn't know much past what we were going to teach in Python. So it was kind of a learning experience for me too. Programming, just general, is a school subject. So we take programming. It's not text based. We use a feature called Sam Labs. So if you understand or have heard of Scratch or code.org, it's similar to that, where you drag blocks into order. And there are these little cubes that I don't know if you were on last time, but one of the panelists, his name was Rob. I think he might have been managing the tech. He runs that program, and it's part of what's called Life, and that's a rotation class that happens. So right now, all 8th graders are taking health life classes, for example. So there was a programming life class last year and the year before, and that involved Sam Labs. And I think we're actually, from what I've heard, the 8th graders are supposed to pick up a Sam Labs kit to do some work with other classes later this year. So that's what I can speak to about programming.
Let's hear from Lucia.
For balancing academics with extracurricular activities, I do middle school main stage. I'm actually currently doing it right now. And it's nice because Deirdre has a space in between when we log on to Zoom and when we log in to middle school main stage. So there's about an hour where you can relax, you can not be staring at the screen and drink some water, just be. During non-COVID times, she has it right after classes, so you can just grab a snack from the barn or the cafeteria and go over. And the outdoor trips are really nice because they're for one day or for one overnight, like a Friday night or a Saturday night, but they normally / always give you some time to do homework, and Catlin is really good about giving you time to do homework and to not be always on your Chromebook or on your iPad or that stuff during Zoom. And yeah, it's really nice.
Isaiah, go ahead.
So I think for just balancing school and homework. Can you guys still hear me? It says my connection isn't stable. Okay, so for homework, I think it's a manageable amount. So on the weekend when we get homework, I know on Sundays at 2:00 I have a coding class where we're learning Java and Python. So I think if I'm doing homework, I usually do it earlier. And then once a month, I also have a piloting program. And that if we weren't in quarantine and doing Zoom learning, we would be going to airports and such and learning about the planes and weather. But I think Catlin does a good job. Like, let's say we have a camp that we're going to for a week for our program. I think if you communicate it with the teachers, they do a great job of keeping you in touch and updating you on classes. So I think it's a manageable amount if you communicate.
I think I'll pick up one question that I passed over earlier, which was a question about if there are no grades, what do report cards look like? And I'll just speak to that, there's typically three reporting periods within a year, and or four, I should say. Two of those are conferences and two of those are formal reports. There's a mix of, depending on the time of year, a narrative report. So like in June, students would get a couple of paragraphs describing in detail what they've done, what their strengths are, what their areas of growth are. And then they're accompanied with a rubric, like the students were describing for specific assignments, to indicate whether students are still developing and growing, or if they're demonstrating proficiency, or if they're excelling in various areas. There's a question that I think is a good one for us to ask, maybe some hint of disbelief that you are representative of the Catlin Gabel community. You are all presenting as very focused and passionate kids committed to learning, and they're wondering, like, are there disruptive kids? Are there distractions in the school day? And what happens when those things occur? And I'll start by answering, yes, of course those things happen, because we're all middle schoolers, and I think some of you maybe even partake in those moments, and that's part of the growing up and learning process. But I think you can speak maybe to what it's like to live in that as a middle schooler. So let's start with Karen.
Well, of course there's going to be some disruptive moments and kind of like joking around, but usually the teacher will try to get your attention and make us quiet down and refocus and continue to do what we were doing before. And it's more of like, when something disruptive happens, we will take a second to kind of breathe and then continue on. And yes, that's basically what happens.
All right, let's hear from Riddhi.
Yes, I agree with Karen. Teachers definitely do that during class when anything happens. And yes, things do happen. But the teacher kind of understands, especially if it's like towards the end of the day, it's like the last class. The teachers kind of understand that the kids are like tired and they don't want to like think anymore. But they kind of cooperate with us in a way. And usually we would like take a little break and just, I don't know, drink water, use the restroom, stuff like that, and move around a little bit so that we're back and focused to continue the rest of class.
Well, with that said, I'll call out that we are probably looking at a group of 6 tired kids who've been at school on Zoom sessions all day long and have homework to do, and maybe have been in main stage production rehearsals after school, in between school and this meeting. A huge thank you to you all for your commitment to our community and your willingness to come and spend this time at night. I hope you all get to bed tonight, and I kind of insist that you do. And if you need me to email your teachers and let them know if you didn't get everything done, I will be glad to do so. But I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate your candid and rich answers to our questions. So thanks so much. And you're getting all kinds of thank yous in the chat too.
I also want to thank you, Steve, and to the students for just spending part of your evening with us and just sharing your really honest thoughts and opinions and experiences with our guests. So thank you so much. Thank you also to the audience for your interest in this session and for your great questions. We hope the students provided a way for you to get just a further sense of Catlin Gabel's Middle School. I just want to take a moment to remind you of a couple upcoming webinars. So next Wednesday, October 28th from 6:30 to 8, we're hosting a session called Beyond the Middle School Classroom. And that'll give you some great information about the various ways that we help students connect with each other and with the school that go beyond the traditional classroom setting. So there'll be folks talking about our advisory program, about middle school clubs and sports, and about activities, such as outdoor trips and middle school dances and all those kinds of things. And just like all of our sessions, there will absolutely be time for Q&A. And then that Thursday, so a week from tomorrow, October 29th, Catlin Gabel has invited Oregon Episcopal School, OES, and a representative from the Enrollment Management Association to bring you an information session on the SSAT, which is one option for taking a standardized admission test. So we just recognize that having your child take a standardized admission test will be a new experience for lots of you. And for some families, it can create some anxiety. So we just wanted to address your questions, as well as topics about, why do schools like Catlin Gabel and OES require an admission test, and how to best prepare your child for the test, and so forth. And like I mentioned, for the others, there will definitely be time for lots of Q&A for that one. Now is also the time to schedule your classroom observation day and the team challenge activity that we talked about in the 6:30 session, and there's more information on the website, and that's also how you would register for those. Each of those will be offered once a week, typically starting in November, but you can register now for those. And then finally, feel free to schedule an individualized virtual middle school tour with me. It's a time for you to just see some photos of the middle school learning spaces if you haven't seen them. And I'll tell you more about the middle school, and it's an opportunity, because it's individualized, for you to ask whatever questions you want about the middle school, about Catlin Gabel as a whole, or about the admission process. And typically they run about 45 minutes to an hour, and I offer multiple opportunities each week. So the tour is completely optional, but I know that families find it quite helpful, and your child can absolutely attend with you if you'd like. So with that, thank you all again, and I hope you all have a really wonderful evening. Good night.